project, aid venture project with the support of United States Agency for International Development. And what do? We do support and develop a venture ecosystem in Belarus, and we do bring great experts from all over the world to share their experience, their stories, failure with you guys. So today we are going, we will talk about culture of Silicon Valley, culture of investment, of being startup, being investor, with two great guests. So please welcome Tristan Pollock, 500 startups venture investor. Tristan, please welcome. Yeah, one mic is here. And Danyelle Pollock, the head of internal affairs in Lyft. As I understand, Lyft is a competitor of Uber. Yeah, they should be scared. Okay, so guys, please welcome your questions, comments anytime. Yeah, and if you need any help in translating, just let me know. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Tristan Pollock. I'm an investor and a founder, so I'm kind of someone who spends time on both sides of the table.
And I'm Danyelle Pollock. I was most recently at a company called Lyft, which Nina said was Uber's biggest competitor in the U.S., covers about 95% of the United States, and has recently expanded into Canada. And was actually the first peer-to-peer ride-sharing service in the U.S. when Uber was just a black car service. So, so Tristan and I have kind of an interesting story. We both grew up in Minnesota in the U.S., which is in the Midwest, kind of in a small suburb. And as soon as we graduated from university, we each started working at kind of larger corporations. Tristan was at BestBuy.com, and I worked for a health insurance company called United Healthcare. And so Minnesota is kind of known for having these larger headquarters like Target, Best Buy, General Mills, a variety of different places. So a lot of our friends, a lot of our peers are still working for, you know, these kind of corporate jobs. So it was kind of the norm for us to kind of fit into that right after university. And so I was doing internal communications, and I was working at a place, like I said, 80,000 people. You know, it's hard to be known. It's hard to know everyone's name. It's impossible to know everyone's name that you work with. And it was kind of expected of us to essentially retire at these companies. We were 22 years old and working with people, you know, much older than ourselves who just would look at us like, oh, you're so creative because you're young and you can do all these things. But really, it wasn't necessarily pushing us to grow and to learn in the ways that we desired. And so Tristan was kind of working on a startup in the background, and I was working, kind of volunteering with different startups that were headquartered in San Francisco. And so we kind of always knew that we wanted to leave Minnesota at some point, but didn't really know where the right place for us was. And Tristan's company that he was working on got accepted into an accelerator in San Francisco. He'll go a little bit more into that, but essentially that was our ticket. That was our decision was made for us. So we had 3 days to pick up and move from Minneapolis to San Francisco. And I was lucky enough to continue telecommuting through my job while we kind of made this transition, which was great because San Francisco had apartment cost about 4 times what it did anywhere else in the U.S. at that time, and Tristan was going from having a full-time job to being a founder with no salary. So it was pretty scary. And as soon as we got to San Francisco, we sold our car. It's a pretty small place, and having a car is very expensive. And as soon as we got there, we saw these cars driving around with a big, fuzzy pink mustache on the front of them, and that was Lyft. That was Lyft's first kind of marketing ploy, if you will. And so it's hard not to notice. So we looked it up. We had some friends talking about it. And we started taking lifts around the city, and all the drivers were amazing. They were kind of like our tour guides, and some even became our friends. And we would go out to dinner with them. They would tell us like the best places to eat and go to concerts and different events not to miss. And I had this kind of aha moment where I went from, I'm working at this corporate job, kind of mundane, and I'm in San Francisco, and every single person I meet is working on something really cool that they're passionate about, and they can't wait to share with you, and you just feel this energy. And I kind of had this look in the mirror moment, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm not proud to work for a health insurance company where no one even knows who I am. I'm not making a difference. And I was like, I want to work at Lyft. Like, I really love this company because all the drivers spoke so highly of it. They were doing really cool things. They were providing free rides to go vote to polling stations, which they still are continuing to do to this day. And their values were just coming through in every single thing that they did. And that was really important to me. And so I applied there, got a job there as a community manager. So we were about 60 employees at the time. And it was crazy. It was a whirlwind. I've been in like 3 or 4 offices within the span of a year. I had like 13 different managers, multiple different job titles. But that was small startup life in San Francisco for you, and I loved it. And it was quite a whirlwind. By the time I left Lyft, I had been there about 5 years, and it went from 60 employees to 3,000 employees. And so my role changed quite a bit as I had been there, from community management to PR. And PR was it was at an exciting time where Lyft and Uber are kind of pitted in the news on almost a daily basis. So seeing the behind the scenes of that world was really fascinating. And then eventually, because I had been doing internal communications before, I really saw the need for that once we got to about 400 or 500 employees. Because we realized that it's really important for our employees to work at a company where we were telling them what they needed to know before they read about it in TechCrunch or on some news site, because Lyft was under such a microscope in the news and in the local news. And so we were disrupting an industry, because ride sharing, 5 years ago, I remember my dad being like, "What are you doing? You're getting in a car with a stranger? That's not safe. How do you know that he's not going to take you out to the middle of nowhere?" And I'm like, think about it. Think about taxi drivers. How do you know who your driver is? How does anyone know that you just got into that car? If you think about, Lyft or Uber, all of these Didi, all these companies, these drivers, like, there's GPS location tracking, there's background checks, there's DMV checks. Like, these things are so much safer. But, to him, it was such a foreign concept, and to me too at first. But, we were at a time. We were disrupting an industry. We were creating laws. We had drivers who were going to jail and getting their cars impounded because police officers would take it upon themselves to say, "What you're doing here is illegal, and I'm going to ticket you for it." And so we were like, "Oh my God, we can't have our drivers going to jail." And I remember my dad would say, "Are you going to have a job next week?" And I'm like, "It's exciting, right? Right, Dad? You're proud, right?" So it was really cool, and something that I learned a lot from. And so by the time I left Lyft, I was heading up internal events. So we have kind of this whole team dedicated to the employee experience, because when you think about a company that can grow so rapidly, a lot changes. Anyone who's been at a small company and anyone who's been at a big company knows that there can be a really drastic difference, and then going from one to the other, even more so. So I can talk about that for days, but Tris, why don't you talk a little bit more about kind of your journey and how we got to San Francisco in the first place, and then what SocialEarth and Storefront was like for you.
Okay, so like I was saying, I'm kind of someone who's spent time at both sides of the table now. Originally, like, we're very proud to be Minnesotan. I heard, I took a tour of Minsk yesterday, and I heard that you also have 10,000 lakes here. Minnesota is actually known as the land of 10,000 lakes. So I guess we'll have to maybe share this as sister cities or something like this. And so, you know, we consider ourselves like outsiders to like Silicon Valley. You know, like we showed up there, you know, 6 years ago. We didn't know anyone, and we had to kind of learn the lingo, learn the jargon, learn like how to like, you know, network and build, you know, relationships with people, how like investment strategy works and fundraising processes. And to be honest, like that's like one thing that was so incredible about an incubator accelerator program, because it gave me, you know, 2 months head start on like and like kind of a crash course in like how to like integrate into a system, right? So I think like there's a couple things, you know, I can speak to. It's like what it looks like to, you know, apply and go through like an accelerator program in the US and in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and also like what it looks like from the other side of like, you know, now at this point, I think I've made about 215 investments, about 50 to 200K into startup companies through 500 startups. And for about, I think, $30 million. So I've raised about $10 million, invested about 30 million. And so I've been kind of like seeing that early stage really well. So like as we kind of get into Q&A, like any questions around like what that looks like, what the scene is like today, how, you know, accelerators and VCs work together, or like anything like that, I'd be happy to answer. And so, because for me, like going through AngelPad, which is actually kind of one of the top 5 accelerators. They're more of like a kind of maybe a mom and pop accelerator in a way that like it's just run by the founder and his wife, but they've also had some big outcomes, like some of the bigger acquisitions from an accelerator. Like MoPub was acquired by Twitter for like 300 million, and they went through a few batches before us. Buffer, social media tool that's done pretty well, went through AngelPad. Postmates went, you know, now an Uber competitor, but they at the time were only doing delivery, and Uber wasn't doing delivery. Went through AngelPad. So we had some like, you know, some interesting companies and founders and like a network that we could kind of integrate into when we were going through there. Like Danielle said, we had 3 days notice to move to San Francisco and get into the program. It started like on Monday, and they told us like Thursday night, and we're like, okay, we literally dropped everything and then lived with like 4 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment with no furniture for the first 2 months. So that was probably the cheapest way I've ever lived in San Francisco, and it still wasn't cheap. That's the hard thing I think about San Francisco today, is it's just not a place that is as easy to experiment in as it was like 5 or 10 years ago. It's so expensive to live there that like you kind of have to have an angle on what you're doing, or a little bit of funding or a little bit of revenue, I think, to like move into the scene, unless unless you can like support yourself and just kind of bankroll yourself. And so it's an interesting place, and I think it leaves an interesting place for other ecosystems all around the world to like now start filling different niches and different technology, you know, different industries, technology for different industries. And I think that's really interesting. Like a lot of people, you know, you may not even think about it, but like people are like in the US are talking about Atlanta as like a startup hub. And you know, it's like places like, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for places that are more affordable to live, have a better quality of life, and still has support for the innovation scene. So also something I'm thinking a lot about as we travel this year. We've stopped at maybe 15 different startup hubs, spent time from everywhere from Albania to Moscow to Rwanda. And so like we've seen a lot of different interesting aspects of like how people are kind of building out an ecosystem and how they're making something special, and really owning like their own local expertise. So anyways, went through AngelPad. As soon as we got out, we went out and took 3 months to raise about $1.5 million for our seed round. And then about a year later, we raised another $7 7 million from Spark Capital, mainly from Spark Capital, but also some celebrity investors. So we have the rapper Nas and Gary Vaynerchuk and a few other people that came into the round, which generally those celebrity investors don't really invest until like a Series A round with like a very legitimate investor coming into a round, although everyone wants to get them involved. And so that's kind of that's a little bit of my fundraising story, because I know everyone is investors or involved with the investment community in the room. And then kind of like 4.5 years in, we ended up selling Storefront to a French company, not for a huge Silicon Valley exit, but one that allowed Storefront to still live on, and it's being run by a new CEO based out of Paris and New York. And so that is when I kind of transitioned to the 500 startup side, where 500, I started working with the 500 accelerator program. So then I saw like the other side of things, did some direct investing with 500, and mainly like was working with companies as they'd come through the program for the 4-month program in San Francisco. And that aspect was, very interesting as well, because 500 is very down to earth. They're very blunt, and they get really involved with the companies from a growth perspective. And I like that perspective a lot, because there's like, look, if you're not going to grow, like you're not going to be able to do anything. So we're going to focus most of our time on how you pitch and how you articulate your message of your business. And then also how do you figure out what levers you can use to build and grow your company. And so that's 500's like unique angle for their accelerator versus other accelerators out there. And so now we're obviously we're traveling, we're taking this kind of sabbatical time to like look at, where would we like to live next, what startup ecosystem we'd like to get involved with. And that brings us to here today. So I don't know, maybe it could be Minsk. You guys tell me. But I think, if we want to open it up to like Q&A, I'd love to just like make this more interactive and just hear what thoughts and things people are thinking about and what they're curious about Silicon Valley and what it's like, what's going on right now, what's interesting, whatever you have, accelerators, incubators. Do we have a roving mic, or should I guess just blurt it out? Just blurt it out. Maybe I give one mic here to pass around. I've been making a lot of eye contact with you, so I thought maybe.
You want a question from me? Yeah. Okay, so, some people say that it doesn't make sense right now to move to Silicon Valley, but some people say you do. So what's your point? I mean, as you said, it depends on the how your startup developed and financial issue. But what's your point? I mean, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, so I love this question. I really love anything around this thinking of startup ecosystems, and generally the rhetoric is that Silicon Valley got like a 40, 50-year head start, right? So now all these other ecosystems really have they have a lot of work to do, but they have a chance to really start developing their technology, their startup ecosystem. And I think you don't have to be obviously you don't have to be in Silicon Valley to create a big business. I think in certain aspects it helps to have connections to the investment community there, also to your team building, like the technical or like leadership employees that you could potentially hire as a business. Some investors, usually Series A or beyond, you'll see that they'll put pressure on founders to like move to the US or to San Francisco, even from like Vancouver. Like, okay, they're just right up the coast, but they're like, we want to see you here, to make sure you're committed to like making this thing scale really fast, in that 5 to 10 years and making it really big. And then sometimes they don't even invest. So it's like, I think it's not necessary. And I think it's really interesting to see like what other cities are starting to become hubs. And that's why like throughout like Atlanta, a lot of people talk about it, like Atlanta, Seattle, Austin in the US, but also like I think, you know, beyond that, or like New York too, and London. But like, I mean, I think it's better just to like have connections. And I think a lot of what's interesting angle that a lot of founders are doing now is like they'll have 2 offices, and they'll be smart about how they do telecommuting. Like they'll have, you know, remote workers, but they'll get on a call every morning, or they'll get on a call every week with all their employees, and they'll really keep a culture going with their team. But they'll have, you know, hey, I have an office in San Francisco, and I have an office somewhere where it's actually affordable to have my entire development team. And I think that actually can like play okay. It's like, okay, U.S. entity, so you can still raise money easily from the U.S., but then also you have a strategic advantage somewhere else. Like, you know, it's much cheaper to have my development team in Belarus, or, you know, Minneapolis or wherever. So I'm a big advocate for that, although it just depends who you talk to.
But as you said that employees are expensive in San Francisco. So what is the next emerging hub, as you said, for such like Silicon Valley place?
So like Los Angeles has become more and more of I think a lot of people from New York and San Francisco, you know, 2 of the most expensive places to live in the U.S., are moving to other, like kind of like just the next city down that still has a good lifestyle. And so like Los Angeles has really grown as a startup hub. You know, Snapchat, Google has a big office there now. So I think there's some aspects like that. And like other international cities too. Like we were just in Cape Town. We really like Cape Town as a place. It's a little farther away from most other places, other hubs. So that's the hard part. But it's a low cost of living. There's Naspers, like there's some big players that have like a lot of money. Some big corporations that have made some investments, and then a burgeoning startup scene that's getting more involved. Melbourne, I think, is also an interesting place. So I think it's really like places that like have like a well-rounded, you know. It's like it's not just what it looks like innovation-wise. It's also what it looks like as the culture of a city. And is it a place that's like pleasurable to live in? Is the food good? Is the people cool? Like, you know, like people are really like. I think, and so like one thing I've been recommending to some cities that we've been talking to is like you have to think about the brand of your city as a whole. If you want to attract, you know, corporations and technology companies and digital nomads and entrepreneurs, you have to think about how do people think about, you know, Minsk, you know, outside of, you know, in Europe, outside of Europe, like, and it's not hard, I think, to like do some media, to like create some initiatives from like the government or the ecosystem partners to really like start getting like involvement, you know, like look at Estonia, right? Like Estonia's done a really good job of like getting worldwide attention for how they've been trying to be more progressive and innovative and allow people to, you know, be e-citizens and things like that. So, totally doable. I don't think it actually takes that much if you just focus on it.
I think when you're thinking about where to start an office, where to open an office, you also have to think about what kind of team you want to invest heavily in on. So a lot of startups are opening offices in Seattle, for example, if they're really heavy on the engineering side of things because of, you know, the talent that's been there, because of Microsoft and Amazon. I also know that in Nashville, a lot of offices have customer service centers because there's a lot of people there that are kind of. In Nashville, you think like it's a very big music scene in the U.S. And there are a lot of bars and restaurants, so there are a lot of servers, a lot of people who are like really great with people who maybe need more of like a full-time job while they're trying to like, you know, make it in the music industry. So Lyft has a big customer service office in Nashville, and it's something that's definitely up and coming there too. So just kind of thinking about like what you're actually looking for when trying to start something, and obviously San Francisco, like a lot of the money is in San Francisco. So if you're really going heavy on fundraising, maybe it does make sense to be there, or maybe just temporarily while you're kind of getting up and running.
I guess I'll do the roving mic, I guess. Anyone else with the other front? Oh, thanks. any other, burning questions that you're thinking about here locally, or like relation to San Francisco, or?
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I have one simple question. You know that the best thing to attract any attention from outside is to create a cool story about your country or your company and so on. So the only cool story about Estonia I know is the Skype. That's all. What do you think? What may be the cool story for Belarus?
Wow, I don't.
Or maybe we are already have some cool stories,
Well, I think, just in a short few days, I think the city is like speaks for itself. It's like very clean, very like calm. We went to October Street, very, very cool. Like it seems like there's definitely like a base level of a good place to live here. As far as like the stories, I think like we were chatting with what was their Bulba. We were chatting with Bulba Ventures last night, and like one, awesome name. I love the name, and then two, like I know like one of the co-founders there like has founded some companies and sold some companies, or even like Masquerade, MSQRD on the wall, sold to Facebook. Or I think like all these stories like play into like, okay, there's something interesting happening here. Even like some things you may not expect, like. So we spent about the last 3 months in the Balkans, and obviously like similar to Belarus, there's a heavy technical community, and so there's a lot of technical talent. But I think like here in Belarus, I've actually seen like more like instances of like design thinking, like good, like even this. I've been like really talking about this way too much. It doesn't seem that interesting, but I got this map of Minsk, and it's like. Really, and just a map of the city, but it's really beautiful. And I was like, probably one of the best maps of a city I've ever gotten. And I'm just like, wow, this is like really, really cool. Like, I think like, and so I kind of see, like, look around to see like what sort of, what ads are people designing? What things do I run into as an outsider? And I see, and I think like there's something there with like the technical talent also had like, or like MSQRD, I think is also designed really well. And it's like, so like, if there's like this design that's added to this technical side, then you just, you have the designer, you have the business person, you have the developer. And so I think like putting that factor together is like, those talent pools is important to building out the ecosystem as well.
Okay, but so what can we do to attract more VC here? Not just cool startups, not just engineers and business angels, but representatives of VC funds.
Yeah, so one, you have it right, like telling the stories of the success stories of companies that have been here. So media is a big component. That also includes like events. I think like a lot, like look at like Slush, in Helsinki, right? Like they've done really like amazing things, like with a mostly like student run event, but like has a great brand. Everyone knows about it in San Francisco, but like, generally people probably weren't going to Helsinki to look for startups before that. Maybe with like, yeah, like Nokia or, but like still like people weren't like, oh, I need to go there. I could probably just like kind of look from abroad. So I think events, telling these stories gets people interested in the right places. Even like you could invite journalists here to like look at like come to like all the startup things and just like get them to look at everything and talk about it. Like that's what we were kind of saying, that like it was working, I thought, well in Rwanda, because in Kigali, the main city there, you think of Rwanda and you think of like the Rwandan genocide, but now 15 plus years later, it actually is a very beautiful, clean city. There's like startups, like startup growth. More people are looking at entrepreneurship there, and even like these outside I think good work with the government is like an important part, because they have actually San Francisco drone companies are going to Kigali and they're starting to do like medical supply drone delivery, because it's just easier to do and there isn't as much like regulation confusion as there is in the US. So it's actually easier for them to test new technology like drone delivery there instead of in the US. So I think like that can be another big component, is like getting the government involved. If you look at like Australia's been doing a lot with their government. They kind of dedicated like, I don't know, a few $100 million or something to like funding different aspects of the ecosystem, whether that's co-working spaces or accelerators or bringing in other VCs or other accelerators. So I think really to get that working and to be like this attractive place, it's like this like kind of media, corporation, technology company, like recruitment, digital nomad, Wi-Fi strength, government. Like it's like this kind of pie that you have to build with all aspects of it, and different parts of it will lead to different things, right? Because you think like, okay, it's good to have a technology company here, but also externalities of that is if you can bring like, let's say the European Slack office to, Minsk, then, some of those people, there's always going to be a few that they'll learn from like how Slack is run, and then they'll come out and then maybe they'll start like new messenger technology, in Minsk. And so like, I think those sorts of things have like a trickle down effect of things happening. And obviously you're trying to start this startup pinwheel where like, if you can get more entrepreneurs here starting things, even if they leave, like they still may come back eventually and like with a big exit, and they might start something to like, if they remember where they came from. So it starts, obviously with having like an ecosystem that's more connected, and they remember that because they'll be like, oh, I want to come back and also do my part to help.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I know that you are already a business angel and you have a number of startups in your portfolio. Yes? How can we make it live to perform some cross-border angel investing? You know that actually business angels prefer to invest in local startups in a circle of 100 miles or so. How can we start to make cross-border investments for business angels, both investors from the United States to Belarusian startups, and maybe Belarusian business angels to invest in the startups in USA?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing what could be good is looking into some AngelList syndicates. I don't know, I know AngelList isn't as popular in Europe yet, but it's kind of the go-to place for like hiring for startups as well as like investing in startups that you may not have access to. So, you can like join someone's syndicate, they'll bring you deals, you can opt in or opt out of those deals. So that could be one avenue to, go abroad like that. I think it's probably one of the better options, because even like angel groups in San Francisco, a lot of times they're not getting the best deal flow. So if you follow the right people on AngelList as part of their syndicate, you can usually, sometimes get into deals that like, are really like, really good deals, really good startups that like are being led by, usually they're being led by a major investor based in the Valley. And then, I guess the other part was like vice versa. How do you get more people out here? I mean, I think that's also like, probably goes both ways. It's just building connections, like hosting investors out here, bringing them to events, having like investment competitions, getting them as judges. Some of that probably direct connection is probably the best, because like you have to, and just also like sorting out, and this is something maybe Imaguru can do, is like, here are like international investors that are open to investing in startups in other countries. And then like if we have like a list of that, then you can like, all right, this incubator, this accelerator, these VCs, because 500 is kind of unique. Like 500 invests in, international companies without even having a entity in the US But if you're in Silicon Valley and you're a VC, you're probably not going to even look at a company that's not based in the U.S. So not only is it like, you know, difficult for the companies already in the U.S., but if you're not a U.S. entity, then it's like completely impossible, unless, you know, you find someone like 500 Startups, or, you know, other like kind of niche programs that like focus on a certain vertical, like, hey, like this one does AI, this one does music tech, this one, you know, some of those can like have more flexibility if it's a globally applicable technology. But I think it actually comes down to some of the most basic things. It's just basic human relationships and just like trying to find ways that you can rub each other's backs. Really, like, I think some of these events and competitions have like been able to bring like investors to places that they wouldn't have normally thought about. Or even 500 puts on a program called Geeks on a Plane, where they'll take investors and founders to, you know, North Africa or, you know, Southeast Asia, or they'll take them to places that maybe they wouldn't understand and have never invested in. But then once they have a chance to understand it better, they may consider and they may make more investments there. And so I think that's really the big thing, right? Because generally investors just are investing in things you don't know. So if I don't understand this other area, so like how do you increase the understanding, increase the education?
Okay, thank you. More questions?
Hello. I have a very specific type of question. Of course, in Belarus you can find a lot of bright people with bright ideas, but one of big problem in this country is a very shaking legal field, and legislation in Belarus is in such a stage that if you touch in very new, you know, field and you start to develop interest in business, but which is very difficult to say, is to understand for ruling people, you know, you come into a risk zone immediately. So in many cases, our local companies prefer to have an extra office in European Union somewhere just to be secure, you know. They just keep here developing companies, doing such a basic things, but they conclude contracts with their, you know, partners in Europe, so in Czech Republic, in Baltic states, etc. So this is something that we will be missing for next, I don't know, probably 3, 5, probably 10 years. And this is the effect of which is very important, but we are not able to avoid. So what would be your suggestion how to handle this issue for people to stay in Belarus, do business in Belarus, attract investors in Belarus, but being in such a insecure field, you know?
Yeah, that's a hard one, but it's definitely not unique either. Like even like I was mentioning Australia, you know, they still, I know I was talking to someone here where they're saying, you know, getting equity to employees can be a difficult thing sometimes. And even in Australia, they recently changed some of their legislation so that was easier. And it looked a little bit more like, you know, what would happen in Silicon Valley. So people are incentivized with equity and they don't have to pay as huge of salaries when they're still a young startup. And so I think, obviously, like being able to like work with, you know, the regulating body and the government, and, you know, ideally have like an advocate who, you know, is like in charge of like the innovation or the, you know, the innovation of the, you know, innovation department or whatever. I think that's kind of what also helped in Australia, where someone came into power as like the Minister of Innovation or something, and was able to like get budget, you know, to like actually be like helping fund programs, helping fund, you know, infrastructure, helping recruit companies that, you know, need a regional office, you know, regional technology office. So I think it's like, obviously that's like what it's going to take to really like kind of make sure the environment, the legal and like equity environment works well. I'd also say though, like, so obviously advocation, lobbying, that sort of stuff is important, and that maybe through consortiums of angels or of startups or executives or whatever that looks like, you know, people with influence in the country or like have some of these success stories of businesses and like trying to like, you know, create the better environment for everyone. I think, you know, those are the people that, you know, need to come together for it. Also, like, it's okay. I'd also say it's okay that it's okay if people leave too, right? Like, it's okay if people like take other opportunities, they take funding from other places, they move out. Just as long as like you keep them, you know, I think it's important to keep those people, or if they've already moved, you know, moved away or, you know, they're working for Facebook now, like getting them back and telling their stories and using them for inspiration and like keeping them close to what's happening here. You know, it's not a bad thing that people leave the ecosystem, because it doesn't mean they're not gonna, it means they may take, you know, bigger opportunities, but then also they may see what they need to bring back to where they grew up. And I think that's something we think a lot about, even with like our home state of like Minnesota, is like we have a lot of pride from being there. We don't live there right now, but when we go back, we try to like help. And if people reach out from Minnesota, I'll pick up that phone call, I'll answer that email, probably even a little bit, they get a little bit of an advantage, you know, over maybe people from other states or other places, because it's like, that's like my home, you know? So I think that's okay to think about too, is that some of that may need to happen in order for more success stories to happen. And you keep trying to get them to come back and speak at events and mentor other founders and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Any question?
Hi. I can read that you participated in 500 startups. Are those startups all successful, or some of them flopped?
Yeah, so definitely not all successful. You know, we're looking at like, okay, like we probably have about 2,000 companies that we've invested in, about $50,000 to $200,000 checks. And, you know, about 5% of those are, you know, unicorns are on track to be unicorns. You know, one of the big ones recently, Twilio, you know, took 8 years to IPO last year. And so like, you know, that you're definitely seeing, you know, this long cycle, and like that's about as old as 500 is about 7 to 8 years old right now. So, you know, it takes time, but we're just starting to see some of those companies come around. So maybe if, you know, 5% are, you know, are kind of unicorns, you know, $1 billion plus valuation companies, then you have probably another like 5 to 10% that would be like centaurs, we call them. And they're like, you know, maybe $100 million valuation companies. And then, you know, there's probably some, the rest, the other, you know, 80% are like, okay, 85%, there's probably like, you know, some cockroaches that like have been hanging around a while. They're not going to be, they haven't died yet. They're doing the cockroach dance, and they haven't, you know, they haven't, they're not going to probably be a unicorn, but they're still running the business and it's profitable. And then there's about everyone else probably died, you know? So it's like definitely the model still in Silicon Valley for venture capitalists, even though 500 invests in a wider amount at lower investments than a lot of VCs in Silicon Valley, and they invest more internationally, so very like a wider depth. And you know, you have Y Combinator who maybe goes like more vertical, and 500 goes a little more horizontal. So they invest in other places, they create micro funds in other regions. YC went like deeper, and they went to like, you know, earlier stage startups and did the fellowship, where like they would like kind of vet people that maybe would fit the accelerator program later on. You see like these different like approaches to it, but far and wide, it's generally like, I want, you know, this 3 to 5% of my portfolio to return the entire portfolio, right? I'm looking for 100 to 500x investment that's going to return to me, and that'll pay off the rest of the, and so that's still, you know, the high risk focus of VCs in Silicon Valley, although there are new investment strategies. And I think the Silicon Valley way of thinking, and where every company has to be like $1 billion company, has to be modified on a local level, because not every company that you invest in is probably going to be this, like, you know, behemoth. So even in Silicon Valley, they're starting to see that. One VC firm is called Indie.vc, INDIE.vc, and they've been looking at, like, how do I, you know, maybe also take a dividend on the companies we invest in. We'll only invest in companies that are profitable or making money, and then we'll have some sort of dividend so that we'll still take an equity percentage of the company, but we don't need them to be a unicorn. Some could end up being a unicorn, but we just need that. We just want companies that are revenue generating, and that will try to tweak the model so that it'll work. So I think that's probably the interesting thing to look at for, like, local, you know, other ecosystems that are not Silicon Valley, is how you can, you know, capitalize as an investor on a unicorn company, but also you can still, you don't have to write everyone else off just because they're not a unicorn. So I think there's a lot of room for innovation for that. You know, even, you know, in Silicon Valley, it's just like starting. So I think a lot of other ecosystems can think about other ways to support businesses without just having it to be a pure VC model.
I think it's also a little bit of a misconception outside of, like, the startup world, that once a startup receives funding or gets into an accelerator program, like, they've made it. This is their ticket, right? Like, it's not expected that most of the companies who go through a program like 500 are going to be successful. Most will fail. It takes the right kind of idea and the right kind of person to really make this happen, and convince other people, like, you need to be using this product, and then they need to make sure that they're growing internally and externally, right? And that kind of thing isn't easy. And something that we've seen pretty much as a theme throughout everywhere we've gone is, like, this idea of failing in a startup is a terrible thing. Like, a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't want to really talk about that startup because it didn't go well, so let's just talk about something else. And we're like, no, but what did you learn? Like, that's the gold nugget in all of this, is what did you learn? And when you talk about kind of making Minsk, for example, like, more of an ecosystem where investors want to come and where people want to stay, employees want to stay here, that means, like, you guys are sharing your knowledge with each other. You're sharing these things that you've experienced, and if they didn't work, that's okay. You're not judging each other and saying, well, you know, that guy's startup didn't work, so he doesn't really know what he's doing. We should shun him from the community. That is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. You should be like, come sit on the stage. Tell us exactly what you did and why you did it and why you think it didn't work. What would you have done differently? What do you think that I should be doing if my company is in that position? Like, these are the things that people are sometimes afraid to talk about, because they think that then they're permanently and forever labeled as a failure, which should not be the case. They should be, you know, they should be put on a pedestal, and they should be like, you know, you did this, now tell me so I don't fail, because, you know, we should all be uplifting each other, which seems so basic and something we learn at such a young age, but I think we're still kind of scared of it. So a lot of, you know, we talk about this a lot in San Francisco, like, half the game is hype. Like, it's not necessarily true that San Francisco has the best talent in the world, it's the best place to be, but if enough people say it, people will believe it. People around the world will believe it. And it's like, you know, we've been there. A lot of people are not killing it, but they say they're killing it. They're like, yeah, I'm doing so good. Like, I grew X%, and you're like, did you really? Because it doesn't look that way. So, but it's like, if they're kind of like putting on this show, people will believe that they're doing well, and eventually maybe they will start doing well, or maybe they'll then, you know, fail and then talk about, you know, what didn't work and then what they learned from it on the other side. But yeah, I think it's
like, and I think it's, well, just to add to that point of, like, failure, it's also good to accept failure and be excited. I think what the interesting vibe in San Francisco is, like, if you, like, quit doing something, let's say you fail or whatever, people are generally like excited, like, oh, cool, what are you gonna do next? Yeah. Like, wow, the possibilities are endless. And if with that sort of attitude, it's really like positive and nurturing, because if you can't fail, then you probably like will work on some idea for so long trying to make it work, and like it's never gonna work, and like but you never want to give up, because if you give up, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, you're done now. But if you are like more accepting of the failure, then they're like, okay, look, I tried this for like a couple of years, I'll move on to something new, and now I can actually take what I learned into maybe a better business idea than it was before.
Yeah, startups are not usually a one and done kind of deal. Like this is, when you want to be a founder, you want to work at a startup, like you're in it for the long haul. You are working on idea after idea until one of them sticks. So don't get discouraged if you're working at a place, or if you invest in something and it doesn't pan out. Like, I mean, we're not playing blackjack here. This is like something that's going to take a long time. It's not usually going to have this like instant payout.
Well, we might be playing blackjack, but just trying to stay in the game just long enough.
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tristan, and your startup, was it your first startup, or did you fail somehow before?
There were definitely many unnamed ideas. And then I had kind of two startups that I talk about, and the first one was bootstrapped, and we sold that one right before starting Storefront. Again, not modest amount. It was kind of a social impact media company, and we ended up selling it to a Boston-based company, a bigger media company, as it goes in media, and then we a few months later then started working on Storefront. Kind of smoke tested and MVP'd over a summer. And then we're like, my co-founder was just like, he was the one really hyped on San Francisco. He was like, we have to try, we have to go to San Francisco. We got to do San Francisco. It's like where everything's happening, part of that brand, right? Like everyone, we have to go there. And so then that's when we applied to AngelPad and got in like a few weeks later. So, but I definitely, I have many failures. I think it's I like the analogy of not the startup roller coaster, but the startup Richter scale. I feel like, startups are like, startup life is like just more jagged, there's many failures in there's many successes and failures in any sort of business. So I've had plenty of both. But I think maybe like one is somewhere, maybe it's in the gray area in the middle, is like you're pitching, like when you're fundraising in Silicon Valley, let's say, okay, I've raised about $10 million in Silicon Valley, and but I've probably pitched 500 investors, and less than 100 of those, or less than maybe like 50 of those became actual investors. So this like 5% of people you ever even talk to even say yes to you. So it's definitely like a extremely competitive environment, very difficult. It's only gotten more difficult as time went on. That was 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and then now, like we had like a really bad MVP, minimum viable product, like. And when we got an AngelPad, and when we had maybe basic, really low customer numbers and revenue numbers when we like raised like a seed. But now like a lot of that stuff that like, working with 500, like no one even close to that level is generally getting into the accelerator now. It's like you have to really have proven out a lot further unless you have something really unique going on. As far as, hey, we're a bunch of founders that already had an exit. That's probably one of the best signifiers is if you have a founder that's experienced at one of the co-founders had an exit before, sold a company or raised money before, like that's probably one of the biggest indicators in a game of kind of semi VC gambling that you have.
But do you feel happier being investor or founder?
I think I'm a founder first. I'm always a founder first, so always like thinking about weird ideas and and working on it. We're working on little projects together this year, which is kind of cool because it's the first time that we've ever worked on things like together. So I think I'm always a founder first. You know, obviously like investing can really help a lot of people, but I like the creation process.
Are you gonna pitch your project to us?
It's not ready yet. It's you know, it's my baby.
Okay.
I'm Michael. Could you tell me, is there any possibility to present, for example, my startup to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Not right now, I mean.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah, we're happy to give out, you know, our you know, emails and everything. We're happy to follow up if there's other questions. You know, one of the biggest things I believe in is mentorship. So if I can be helpful, you know, over email after, happy to.
By the way, you visited a lot of countries. Have you heard something interesting about local products? And are you ready to invest here in Belarus or in Rwanda, somewhere else? Personally, you.
Oh yeah, personally, yeah. Well, great question. So, as a you know representative of 500, like we are investing. Like we would invest in a Belarusian company. Like so, you know. And we have. Actually, that's why we're here, because we invested in our friend Michael from Friendly Data. His company, he went through the program when I was working in the accelerator program in SF. And so that's how we ended up here. So he introduced us, said, hey, while you're traveling, you should come to Minsk. And we're like, okay. And so that's how simple I think these things can work. You know, it's just like one relationship can add to another relationship. And it's just, you know, it's like, it seems like just like really basic, you know, really basic network effects, but it really works if you like, you know, build those relationships. So I mean, if there are interesting companies here that I talk to or meet, or if anyone you know of companies that you've invested in that you're like, hey, here's my best company, I only want your best company, I'm happy to like pass it on to the right people at 500. You know, if I can help in other ways, or if we can be helpful in other ways, like we're happy to. So, yeah, that's the good thing about spending time with a company like investor like 500 is that they are so willing to help make good founders, no matter where they are. And I think it's becoming more and more common that like you see that for you know, see more like widely international investors like that. So that's a good thing.
And one more question. You said that for startups, it's a highly competitive market, but there are a lot of money without any idea. Do you think accelerators gonna compete as well?
Oh yeah, there's definitely competition. I can say that from the inside, right? Like, you know, someone will be. It usually ends up for us. It's usually like 500 versus YC. Does everyone knows Y Combinator? Y Combinator, you know, and 500, probably the two longest running in accelerators out of Silicon Valley. Techstars is pretty close to there too. And you know, they'll be like, oh, hey, you know, like I interviewed with YC as well, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting. Tell us about, you know, tell us about that. It's a good, I mean, it's generally like, it's good. I would recommend it for a founder because it's good to have optionality, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because usually what happens is the basket's going to rip a hole in it, and then you're going to like, there'll be like one egg left, and you're like, okay, that egg. And then, so like, I think like, you know, but as like from the other side, you know, as 500, we also don't want to feel like, we want to feel like you actually value the program, and you want to get a lot out of going through the 500 program. You're not just like, you know, trying to pit us against YC. So, but I think it's you know, it's more friendly competition. I say like, obviously you want to get the best deal, and you can see it. It's like, especially with VCs, and like for our Series A with Storefront, like it's like sharks with blood in the water sometimes. And like you have to say no to people, and it can get kind of ugly, because if you're actually, that's like when you get like the right dynamic of like, you know, of a fundraise. And like, let's say like when we got like our, you know, out of the 7 million, we got the 5.5 million check. okay, now people want to get involved, right? Even though they all said no to us or they didn't say anything to us before, now they're like, now I want in. And you're like, well, look, like we went through this whole we've been fundraising for a month or 2 months or 3 months, and now you want to get in, but there's no more room. And like then like there's some weird things that can happen to try to get into a round that's very hot, which is why it's like sometimes an investor, an angel, you know, they'll have the founder, if they build a relationship with the founder, you know, basically on your behalf, then like you could get into their angel list syndicate and like get a portion of a company that like you would never be able to develop the relationship so quickly on yourself, like when things are moving that fast. So that's why I was like kind of recommending that. Or the other angle of it is just staying closely involved with like, you know, investors that you think are good, and, you know, saying like, hey, look, I have like X amount of dollars to put into companies. I'll put them in at your terms, whatever that VC sets, just let me know. And like, you know, every good investor has their group of people that like want to invest with that, and they probably give some preference if they can. So just those, maintaining those relationships is good. And it's more collaborative usually, unless there's like a moment where like people are trying to force their way in and change the deal terms. What if I ask a question to you guys, like what out of the ecosystem here, like what do you think is most needed? You know, what are you like thinking about as far as, you know, Belarus or Minsk, and like what do you think, like, you know, you could bring, you know, what could be brought that would really make a huge difference? More investment opportunities?
Money is not a question. Networking, connections with business angels, close connections with business angels and VC funds all over the world. First of all, it might be European VCs and, of course, VCs from the United States. And we also need some time to build our ecosystem to get mature, you know, because we are only in the start of this journey, unfortunately. Or maybe it's a good time to start now. Do you know about Draper's cycle, the cycle between venture capital funding and private equity funding and merger and acquisitions? No?
Like you're looking at kind of the fly, or like the process between those two?
Mm-hmm.
Lightly, there's something specific with Tim Draper's view?
Okay, we can discuss it later. Talking about your question, I think that's all things we need. Time, networking, and close, friendly connections with business angels and VCs. And that's all. More, and of course, more good project to start.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing, you know, is like, okay, like, so whatever, we're all investors here, so, you know, we all like to feel special, right? And so, I mean, I think one thing that could be interesting is, you know, kind of replicating the 500 geeks on a plane thing, where like, hey, look, maybe you like kind of put on like kind of an exclusive event or even exclusive dinner, and then you like, you know, invite a new guest. You get a little budget pooled and you invite like a new, you know, managing director, VC, you know, prominent angel from Europe or the US or and then you bring them to this dinner, and maybe it's only like 10, 20 people or something. And, you know, like, I feel like some things like that could really, like, you know, these intimate setting, easy to do, easy to set up a dinner. You can piggyback that off with like any major events that happen in Minsk. You know, get people as speakers. Like I was saying, that's like an easy one. I think people are always happy to help, and you know, and really all you have to do a lot of times is like, you know, help with travel costs for, you know, for someone you know, that wants to come out. And so, you know, events, dinners, exclusive things, you know, movers and shakers, that sort of, like those sorts of events, like for people like that, hey, come come to, you know, maybe I'll tell you some of the ways I've been pitched to go to places. Slush, you know, Slush did a private jet, charter jet that they booked people on. You did have to pay for a ticket, but like they were like, hey, we'll put you on a cool jet with like speakers and interesting people that are coming to Slush, and you could get on this jet, so you're like with people, and like we're gonna like do some cool stuff. Like that was interesting. I think Slush is a good avenue of like looking at a good event and like interesting marketing ways to like, you know, make that event, you know, very fun, cool, worthwhile. Events around the events, you know, categorical, like different types of investments. You know, they had the music part of Slush, which probably actually came out of like South by Southwest. If everyone's familiar with South by Southwest, that's like a big reason why Austin, I think, became like a little bit of a tech hub in the US, because they had this event that used to be a music festival, but now they have a technology and entertainment, you know, they have all these different avenues of this big event. That got interesting people there, and eventually some people move there because they're like, this is a cool city. So I think giving people a chance to experience that. You could look at like Tony Hsieh, who's the founder of Zappos. He, you know, has done some really interesting things with Vegas, like with Las Vegas. Like you never thought of Vegas as a place you'd live, right? It's usually a place that you go to, you know, party. And so, but he took downtown Vegas, you know, he kept the Zappos headquarters there. He put money into a venture fund that was based there. They invested in businesses that, you know, had an office or they had their headquarters in Vegas. And then he also like started helping fund like cultural things. And then they put this festival on that we went to the first year called Life is Beautiful. And through that, then they brought, you know, kind of like on October Street, they brought in a bunch of street artists that did amazing murals in the city, permanent murals in downtown Vegas. They like had like, you know, leadership speakers as well as food, as well as music. And like they used that as like an avenue to like keep raising the image of downtown Vegas as a place you could actually live. And so I think like those stories are really interesting to look at, of like how people are branding a place, or they're revitalizing a place, making it exciting, making it cool to be there, because it not only helps the people that live in a city, but it also attracts new talent instead of having brain drain. So how's everyone feeling out there? Is there anything else that we can help with while we're here? Is there any other thoughts about Silicon Valley that you have? You know, any thoughts about, you know, for Danyelle that, you know, has been saw this company, she, you know, from employee number 60 to like 3,000 employees. She helped kind of grow it from the inside, and the culture and the community of it, which, you know, now Lyft is like a 15 billion market cap now. Any other things there? Anyone have any jokes? Belarusian jokes? I haven't learned any yet, so.
It's probably a good thing.
Okay, I suppose if we are done here, we have some time for networking, drink some coffee, tea, and you guys have time to ask in person something for Tristan and Danyelle. Let's thank our speakers today. Thank you very much for your great speech. And we have at 7 p.m. we have another event. So guys, drink more coffee, please, to be energetic. Some bulba, draniki. Okay. Okay, so just enjoy. Thank you very much.